that while he looks the part, he's super jacked. I think that he's kind of a one-trick pony. He's the handstand push-up wizard.
I'm a what?
Yo, Brian Friend did it. I'm wearing his shirt, right? Be friendly. And what happened was he made a 100 persons list of the males. He made a 100 persons list of the females. He power ranked everybody. And that was a ballsy thing to do. And it's very hard to do. And I think he actually goes into it a little bit. I know that he talks about the fact that if you were to go in the MLB, you look at the 32 teams. And if you're going to make a top 10 shortstops, you look at 32 shortstops and you put them into a power rankings list. That's easy when you only have 32 teams to look at. But when you have the entire freaking world to look at, yeah, sure, you can use the leaderboard. Sure, you can use the CrossFit games. And sure, everyone's going to have their opinions. But it is not an easy thing to do to put all these things together. And I want to thank Brian Friend for putting these things together because I took both of those lists. And what I did is I tried to put them into one male and female combined top 100 list. What I thought would be interesting was with the way that I wanted to do this, again, this is entirely my opinion, is that I wanted to see if I thought there were more males in the top 100 or there were more females in the top 100. For example, if they were all to go to the CrossFit games and there were going to be a pool of 200 people, would there be 60 males in the top 100 and then there would be 40 females in the top 100? Would it be vice versa? Would it be 80 males and 20 females? Sevon asked me the other day, actually. I don't know if it was on air or off the air, but he asked if I thought that I could put together a competition where the males and females could compete against one another when I was at the affiliate. And even while I still write programming, I try to make it so it's at the very minimum at least comparable. So I do think that there is a world in which this would be possible. You put the males and the females together, and of course it wouldn't be as cool watching them lift the weights because you'd have to go through some sort of a calculation after, maybe like a Sinclair number. But we're going to get into the arbitrary, where do I think people will stand when pitted up against one another. So the way that this worked is I essentially went Tia Toomey against Justin Medeiros. In that, Tia Toomey beats Justin Medeiros every single time, and we all know why. Justin Medeiros, I have him at number 2. I then have Roman Krennikov, Mal O'Brien, and Patrick Vellner. So the way that that works is it goes Tia versus Justin, Justin versus Mal, and I think that Justin would beat Mal. And then I also think that Roman would beat Mal. I, however, think that Mal would beat Patrick Vellner. So you see how that works. I essentially took Brian's list and I would pit up the next closest person to the person who I had previously ranked up against somebody else, and then you just continue on down the list all the way through 100. So you can see that I also think that Vellner, Ricky, Jeff Adler would all beat Laura Horvath, but I think that Laura Horvath, Annie, Emma, Haley, Danielle, Brooke, Cara would all beat Lazar Dukic if they were pitted up one against one another. So there are my 1 through 15s in order and kind of how that works. So if you were to put Lazar up against each and every one of these females, I think that in a head-to-head competition, the females would come out over the top of Lazar. And you can see that I also have Brian Friend's ranking kind of right next to him. So Emma Lawson is the 5th ranked female. You can see that Cara Saunders is the 5th ranked female, and Lazar is the 6th ranked male. So of the top 15 right now, 9 of them are female and 6 of them are male. And I hope that gives you a little bit more insight into the top 100. And it will be interesting to see what you guys think. So right now, the females are beating the males when it comes to my opinion.
It doesn't matter!
After the next 100, where do you think that this is going to go? I've got Lazar, BKG, Sam, Brent, Jason, Saxon, all beating out Gabby Magawa. And I think that Gabby has a soft spot in the heart of Brian Friend. So while she is very fit and she did well at the Rogue Invitational, she didn't do quite as well as predicted at the CrossFit Games. And I still think that Brian's looking for her to finish a little bit higher, but I do have Lazar, BKG, Sam, Brent, Jason, Saxon, all ranked above Gabby Magawa. So she was almost the gatekeeper, and that's how it's going to look. If I think that Brian maybe had somebody in the wrong spot, then there's usually a surplus of either a male or a female sex coming in there. So there was a giant run for the males leading up to Gabby, and at this point it's pretty evenly split. You can see that Saxon is the 11th ranked male, Gabby's the 10th ranked female. We then have Alexis Raptis next, followed by Amanda Barnhart, both beating out Guy, and you can see that Amanda and Guy, of our top 24, it goes 12 male and 12 female. So while I still think that maybe Gabby was in an incorrect spot, maybe she should have been a little bit further down the list relatively to all of the rest of the females. After 24, This tells me that Brian was pretty spot on, at least when I'm doing it with my stupid opinion, which means absolutely nothing.
It doesn't matter!
You can see that the males and the females are about the same through about a quarter of the way through this list. We've got Sam Cornway, we've got Yonakoski, we've got Scott Panchik, Noah Olson, all beating out Emma McQuaid. Emma McQuaid's the 13th ranked female on Brian's list. She did really well at Lollapalooza. She did well at the CrossFit Games, but I do think that age is going to be taking her out a little bit. I think Brian may have ranked her a little bit too high. I also think that Noah Olson, Scott Panchik, Yonakoski, Sam Cornway could have been a little bit higher on the list. That's why there's 4 in a row right there. Next up, we've got Christy O'Connell, Olivia Kerstetter, Ellie Turner, Ariel Lowin, Katrin David's daughter, all above Cole Sager. Cole Sager is one of those people who I never understand why he finishes so high. Maybe it's because Ben Bergeron puts all of his thought and effort into Cole Sager, makes every other athlete leave, but all of the powers that go to Ben Bergeron then are put into Cole Sager. So every year he finishes in the top 10 and maybe into the top 15-ish. This year he was 13th, I don't remember. But usually it's a good finish. I don't expect that to continue. I think maybe he's a little bit too high on this list. Call that the Ben Bergeron effect in Andrew's head. Cole's finish is higher, but when you look at the other females on this list, Christy does well. Olivia Kerstetter's first year in the open division, she's going to do very well. Ellie Turner's a fucking monster. Ariel Lowen always doing better than expected, and she's a beast. Katrin David's daughter beats Cole Sager just because she is no longer with Ben Bergeron. Then we've got Dallin Pepper, Travis Mayer, Willie Georges, Chandler Smith, and Nick Matthew all over Lucy Campbell, because Lucy Campbell doesn't have the longest tenure. I believe that I saw that she's been doing CrossFit for only a handful of years, and her trajectory has been going up and up and up, and she did have a very strong performance at the CrossFit Games, peaked out by, of course, that swim performance. But all of those names right there are proven names, with the exception of Nick Matthew, who also had a very good showing at the CrossFit Games this year. But I probably have a bit of a bias if we were to go Nick Matthew versus Lucy Campbell, because I'm a big Nick Matthew fan. I have been for a long time. I love the crop top. Sevon hates the crop top, but if anything, I like that he's cutting up the Noble shirts, and Noble's like, what the fuck, Nick Matthew? Anything to fuck with Noble. So then we've got Emma Carey, and then Royce Dunn, and then Sarah Simeon's daughter, followed by a handful of females, that being Jamie Sidman, Jacqueline Dahlstrom, Carolyn Freyova, Annika Greer, Matilda Garns, Madeline Sturck, Turi Helgadottir, all over Spencer Panchik. I think Saxon is the better of the Panchiks. I don't think I'm very far off, or anyone would argue with me saying that. Spencer, I do think, kind of got through by the grace of God and took over Tyler Christophel's spot. I could be wrong. Next year he could be much better, and I don't dislike Spencer Panchik by any reason, but I do think that he rides the coattails of the Scott, which of course is a fucking beast, Saxon, who destroyed that semifinal, and now he's just kind of lumped into the we're going to be better than everybody else because we are the Panchiks. But I do think that this entire brick of females is better than Spencer. And at this point in the list, at 52 with Spencer Panchik, we have 24 males on the list and 28 females on the list. So what do you think? Are we going to be going further to the female side or further to the male side from this point on forward? Alex Vigneault at 53, Emily Rolfe at 54, Emma Tull at 55, Andre Houdet at 56, Paige Semenza at 57, Chloe Wilson at 58, Bethany Shadburn at 59, Danny Spiegel at 60, Alice Kazan at 61. And what you're going to see is a run of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 females before we get to Henrik Happalainen. And that's because I think that all of these females could very well do much better on this list than Brian had them placed. And I know this is a very tough list, and I'm not trying to pick on Brian's list, but this is my own personal opinion against what Brian has a pretty level head, with the exception of, I believe, that Gabby Magawa. I think that he really likes her. He puts a little bit higher than typical, or maybe she should be. I've already broken down that a little bit, but I think that Henrik Happalainen, while he kind of should be right where he's at based upon his performance history, all of these females have the potential to be much higher. And yeah, that includes Danny Spiegel. Luka Ducic comes up after Henrik, and then we got Adrian Moonweiler, Alexander Caron, Jay Crouch, Baden Brown, all above Paige Powers, who I believe has been overrated because of her performance maybe at the Atlas Games and because of her tenure at CrossFit Mayhem. If the programming continues the way that it has been at the CrossFit Games, she's going to have to do some work at the foundational level. That's my opinion. By foundational, I mean building up some strength, upper body strength in particular. Then we got Carolyn Prevost, Bailey Rail, followed by Bill Leahy 4. I had to look into Bill Leahy 4 a little bit. He is younger, and I'm like, why the fuck is Brian putting him so high? It's because I think that he is actually going to be a fucking monster. So in comes Bill Leahy 4. When I first saw that name, I was like, oh, here we go. It's going to go female, 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 female. Bill Leahy, the 4, is not going to be able to beat any single one of these females. But then we get to Sung Young Choi, and I do think that Bill Leahy, the 4, is going to beat out Sung Young Choi. While she did have a very good finish, I do also think that Jake Berman, James Sprague, and Uldis Upenix will all also beat out Sung Young Choi. Nothing against Sung Young Choi, but those people on that list, how I broke down the females, I thought they could have finished very much higher. I think that every single one of these males has the potential to be further up on the list. Not that they're in an incorrect spot, but the potential, I think, is much higher than the potential of Sung Young Choi for the 2023 season. It's a good spot to break right here. So we're at 75 with Sung Young Choi. We have 40 females taken and 36 males taken. So the females are still ahead by 4 when we got into the 75 spot. Sydney Mikulishin at 76, followed by an onslaught of males. This one gets wild. You're going to probably not like this very much, and I'll tell you why. So we start with Will Moorad at 77, Tim Paulson, Tyler Christoffel, Luke DeJong, Bailey Martin, Matt DeLugos, Alex Catoulis, Jeremy Briand, all beating out Solveig Sigurdardottir. Solveig Sigurdardottir is one of those Instagram famous people who made the CrossFit Games this year. She beat out Katrin Davidsdottir for the 5th spot, and I actually think she was above Carolyn Freyova at strength and depth.
Idiot.
That might not be the right person, but I know that Solveig took 4th at strength and depth. If you look at the finishes there, she won the weightlifting event, and then I do think that the workouts at that semifinal in particular were in her favor, and I do think that Brian has her ranked way too high on this list. You can see that especially with her finish at the CrossFit Games. I think that every single one of these males, while they may not have qualified, I think they have the potential to finish at least in the 20s if they were to have made it to the CrossFit Games this year or in years in the future, and I think their potential far exceeds the potential of Solveig. So because of that, we're now at 85. We have 44 males taken and 41 females taken.
4 wins is going to get you in the final match, with that 5th win getting you the $50K that everyone's chasing. Cotton!
That was quite the swing thanks to the placement of Solveig on Brian Friend's list right there. But we then have Christine Kohlenbrander, Sarah Kea at 43. We got Freya Mosberger at 44. Claudia at 45. Angasi at 46. Rebecca Fuselier at 47. Kelly Clark at 48, Felix Agafi at 49. And we have all of these females in a row that is from spots 85 with Solveig, who was a block for the freaking females, all the way up until Enrico Zanoni at 94 being a block for the males. And that's because I think that while he looks the part, he's super fucking jacked. I think that he's kind of a one-trick pony. He's the handstand push-up wizard.
I'm a what?
Harry, you're a wizard.
I'm a what?
A wizard, Harry.
I'm a wizard?
Yes, Harry, you're a wizard.
But I'm just Harry.
Well, just Harry, you're a wizard.
Listen here, Hagrid, you fat oaf. I'm not a fucking wizard.
For God's sake, Harry, what is with this language? You're a fucking wizard.
I don't give a fuck, you fat, hairy bastard. I'm not a fucking wizard.
Listen, Harry, you're going to go to Hogwarts and do spells and shit, and you gotta be fucking pleased about it.
I don't want to do your fucking spells, you basket case. Stick it up your fucking dick hole.
My fucking what?
While you get further along in the weekend, he kind of fell off. And I think that the likes of a Kelly Clark, the Rebecca Fuselier, the Fia Agafis, the Freya Moosbergers in particular are going to be able to beat out Enrico Zanoni when pitted up head-to-head against one another. Taylor Self is at 95, Moritz Feibig is at 96, Cole Graysaber is at 97, Tudor Magda is at 98, Colton Mertens at 99, and Luke Fiso at 100, giving us a grand total of 51 males in the top 100 for me and 49 females in the top 100. And the only reason that happened is because female behind Fia Agafi was a name that I couldn't pronounce if you gave me $1 million. It's Elena Karatala Senhuja. Not only could I not pronounce it, but if I were to put it into my Excel sheet, it would have completely spread out the freaking columns, and that would have drove me nuts. At 53 on the female list, we have Shelby Neal, and I think she could finish way freaking higher. And the name that I mentioned earlier on was Alicia Fuliano, who I think was actually in 5th behind Solveig Sigurdardottir.
Idiot!
But at the end of the entire thing, it's basically a wash. It's 50 males in the top 100 and 50 females in my stupid top 100 where I'm basically pitting them up against one another. Brian Friend knows way more about this stuff than I do, and while I think that maybe there were a couple of people who are a couple of spots off, it ends up being a wash when you put up people against other people. You see giant runs by the males or giant runs by the females on my stupid little list, but when push comes to shove, they end up being pretty even, the males against the females, and that just means that Brian did a very good job on his power rankings list. list. Like I said earlier, I think it would be entirely possible to have a competition where they're all going up against one another. You would indeed see Tia Toomey beating Justin Medeiros, and then it would be cool to kind of see where everybody falls. CrossFit can literally do whatever they want, and maybe they should just do that. Like, you don't have a male champion and a female champion, you have a fittest person on earth. What do you guys think about that? How do you like my list? Do you have opinions similar to mine about certain people in certain spots, notably like the Gabby McGowas, the Solvig, maybe the Enrico Zanonis of the world? Wrote in the comments section. Andrew Hiller out.